All right, how's it going, everybody? I'm Hayden. I'll be doing your lessons for the CyberQuest. Today we're going to be covering some Linux fundamentals. These commands are going to be used in CyberQuest along with most challenges ran in Linux. So these are going to be different CTF challenges, hack the box, try hack me, anything like that. You're going to be using Linux. So it's kind of a requirement, especially for CyberQuest, to understand how the Linux command line interface works. You're going to be operating out of that, unlike a GUI or a desktop interface. A lot of Linux will have a desktop interface. I mean, mine's meshed with my Windows system, but Linux in itself will have a desktop. What I'm talking about today is going to be the command line interface and going over some commands with you to get you understanding how we as ethical pen testers or ethical hackers, or you guys competing in these CyberQuest tournament, are going to be utilizing the command line interface to more effectively initiate these different attacks or puzzle solving techniques. So going along today, you'll see commands with dashes in them. For example, ls tac la. I will be referring to this dash as a tac. This is widely common in the industry. It's just easier than getting it all confused with dashes. So if you hear me say tac, it's going to be the little minus sign on your keyboard. Doing that is going to be adding option modifiers to the commands on how they work, and understanding the difference between standard commands and commands with modifiers will be the difference between saving a lot of time during the competition and expanding on your knowledge base of Linux command line. So we're going to be going over navigation first off. So there's a lot of different navigation commands. So we have, for example, pwd, which is print the working directory. It's going to show where I am. Let me enlarge this for you guys really quick. So doing pwd is going to list where we are currently, so that's going to list out our /home/Kali directory. Now the directories are just like if I went into the file manager itself, which you can see. So if I go into the file manager and I open a folder, it's going to be /home, so I'm already in /home/Kali. So this is what is going to be the difference between a GUI and a CLI interface. We're going to be operating, again, in that CLI interface. So other commands, since we already know that we are in that /home/Kali directory, we can, for example, list files. So ls standard is going to list files or directories that are in our current working directory. So you can see, again, comparing that to the graphic user interface, we have desktop, documents, downloads, and etc. So adding those modifiers I was talking about, so if we did ls tac la, that's going to be listing a long format. That's what that L stands for. So a long format in all files, even if they're hidden. So now you'll see that it looks a lot different. I wasn't able to see this in the graphics interface, but I can see this in the command line interface because we have a higher priority or a higher permission than the graphics interface. So you can still see the same things: desktop, documents, downloads, music and pictures, but you'll see everything that we weren't able to see before. So like bash logout, bash rc. I'm running this on VirtualBox, so you'll see my VirtualBox client clipboards and displays, and all of that goes along with that. So adding those modifiers will allow us to see a lot more than what we either should see or are supposed to see, and you'll see this a lot in the CyberQuest. Hidden files that are containing hash passwords or just plain text passwords, or even just hidden files that will contain the answers for that part of the question. Now, going on to this, we know by using pwd or print working directory that we are in /home/Kali. But what if we don't want to be in /home/Kali? We can do cd, which stands for change directory. So using that by itself, we are going to be back still again in /home/Kali because we didn't add any modifiers. So modifiers don't necessarily have to have those tags. It depends on how the command is working, but if we wanted to change the directory to, let's say, /etc. Now if we do that, you can see at the very edge of the CLI screen on the command line that it will show what directory I'm in. Like over here it showed that I was in my home directory, which is what that little squiggly is. And now that I changed my directory to /etc, it will say that I'm in /etc. And just to verify, we can run that pwd command again, and you can see now I'm in /etc. The cd command isn't just for moving forwards through your directory. You can actually jump back from the directory. So if we just add a tac, you can see that doing that brought us back to the /home/CLI. There's a couple different ways to do that. So if I was going to do a lot of jumps, which you might do during the competition, so if I changed my directory to /etc and I was working in here, let me list some directories that are in here, and then I changed my directory from /etc to /cloud. That's wrong. Sorry, etc/cloud. Now you can see again that it still shows that I'm on etc/cloud, and you can verify that always with pwd. But what if I just wanted to go back to /etc? This is the difference of understanding those modifiers and saving you some time, or it might just be my obsession. But instead of doing /etc again, that's 4 more characters, which might not seem like a lot, but we can do that little tac, which will bring us back to /etc, or we can do 2 periods, which will also jump us back. Now there's other things that you can do here as well. So cd, I can again put that squiggly, and that's going to bring me back to my home directory. You can always press the up and down buttons on your keyboard to cycle through previous commands that you did, if you want to just jump back through that. So I can go back immediately to /etc cloud, or I can go just to /etc that way, but you know, that takes time. So moving on from changing directory, we can actually make directories ourselves. So I'm also going to just go back to my home directory, which I can verify. Now that I've verified that I'm back in my home directory, I am going to make a directory, which is mkdir, which is short for make directory. It's not too complicated. And if we add a modifier like tacp, this is going to create the whole path if it's missing, which we can add here just for safe measure, and then we can name this whatever we want to be. So I'm going to name this test. And it looks like nothing happened, but if we do ls, you can see that test has now shown up in here. And so let's say during your competition there was a hidden directory that you wanted to go to, might not show up in there. So going back to that, you can list out all directories, and you can see here that I created this directory. So that's also what this looks very complicated. So you have like dr, wx, r, tacxr, tacx, and it's going to show you who owns that directory. Root being the highest privilege that can own anything in the Linux command line or anywhere in Linux. But all of these little markers mean a lot of different things, and we'll get back to that later on. But this is going to show what permissions were used to write that file, who owns that file, who has permissions to write to or read that file. And because I made mine, it will show that CLI owns this, because that's what my username is. And it will show me when it was created, at what time it was created, and you know, everything else for that. But we will go back to that here in a little bit. Some other commands, so some Linux commands can be kind of dangerous to run, like rm. So rm is remove. So we can remove a directory, which is rmdir, remove directory, and I'm going to just do test. I'm going to remove my test directory, and you can see that my test directory is now gone. There's a couple commands with rm that can be a little dangerous. For example, rm tacrf. Depending on where you are in the Linux command line, do not ever run this unless you know what you're doing, because this will, without asking for permission, remove all remaining files inside of Linux. This will completely break your system. Linux is not forgiving like Windows. It is designed for people who have some functioning brain cells to make good decisions. So do not run remove remaining files. It is not a fun prank to play on your friends. It is very frustrating. You can lose a lot of work and a lot of progress. And as well in CyberQuest, you will get kicked out. They can tell who ran that command if you run that on a CyberQuest computer. Please do not do that. So moving on from navigation, we're going to go back into file operations, so working with files. So there's a couple different ways to make a file. You can, obviously just go to the main desktop and, or I'm not in my Linux desktop, but you can right click on the Linux desktop and make a new file, text file, or in the command line you can use touch and name this whatever you want it to be. So I'll do notes.txt. You can see that notes.txt now exists inside of my home CLI file system, because that's where I'm at. And if we want to know what's inside of notes.txt, if we didn't create the file, we can use cat notes.txt. You can also press tab for a lot of these commands. You can press the tab button and it will autofill parts of the command if it recognizes it. So we can cat notes.txt. It didn't print anything out for us because we know we created the file and there's nothing in it. If we wanted to add to that file in the command line, we can use nano notes.txt, and this is going to open up a text editor inside of the terminal for us, and we can write, I'm going to say that I was here, and hello CEC. So the GNU Nano is kind of difficult to navigate. As you can see on the bottom of my screen, there's a lot of commands. These are shortcuts, but I'm going to save this so you can Control S just like another text editor, and it will say that I wrote 3 lines of text, which I did because there is 3 lines, and then I can Control X. Now if we ran that cat notes file, you can see that it will print out what was in there into our command line. So Hayden was here and hello CEC, which is pretty cool. And if I wanted to, let's say we were in that CyberQuest competition and you noticed that there was a text file and you wanted to keep a copy of that file for yourself if it was going to be beneficial for a different challenge or something in there. You can use the CP, which is copy. I can copy notes.txt, and I'm going to copy this over to a new text document that I'm going to say is copy.txt. And now when I do this, you can see that notes.txt and copy.txt exists still. So we just copied notes.txt over to copy. And if I do, if I want to read my copy.txt, it's going to be the exact same thing. You can also see that if we list out all of those, notes.txt and copy.txt are both the same and are in our file system. So we have those text files now, and I might not want to keep those, so I can actually remove, using that rm command again, I can remove copy.txt, and you can see that it removed that, and I am also going to remove notes.txt. So pretty self-explanatory. Going back to that dangerous command, I kind of forgot to explain what the rf means. So if you do rm hack rf, do not execute this command. A lot of people, so it's going to remove, we like to say remaining files, but that's not what RF stands for. It's actually recursive and force. So you can do tac f on rm and it's going to force this command to run, but so recursively forcing this to run is going to, without asking and at any user permission level, it will remove any remaining files in the entire recursive file system for Linux. So just wanted to go back over that with you really quick. So we just went over a bunch of files, and files are great, but files are not always open to everybody, so we kind of have to talk about permission levels. So permissions and users, who can do what. So I can tell who I am and what permission levels I have if I run who am I. Oh, sorry, I added a quote. So if I ask who am I, it will say I am CLI, which is true because that is my user. So if this does not say root, you are not a root user. And then if I do ID, it will show who has IDs in the system. So you can see UID 1000 is CLI, GID 1000 is CLI, all the way up into the different services we have running on the system and everything in here. So that's how you see who you are. So we can do ls tac l, which is going to list who has permissions in the file folder. So if this were to say that root and root only have access to desktop, but running that who am I command, I can see that I'm only CLI. I would not be able to access this desktop file. Thankfully, we don't have one of those. But we can create one of those. So what we can do, we can make one of those notes files again. So I'm going to touch notes.txt. I'm going to make a notes file again. And then I can list out for that specific file who has access to it. So CLI has access to it. CLI has a read-write, and read privilege for that notes file. And what I can do is I can add, change the owner, so chmod. I can do +x for the user that I want to do, which is add an execute privilege. And then I can do notes.txt. If I list out notes.txt again, see that this now changed and looks a little bit different than when I didn't do any of those execution permissions. So we know who we are, what files we own, and how to make scripts run by adding those execution permissions. But what if the system itself is kind of giving you a little bit of a hassle? So we can check processes and system information. I'll keep this one a little bit short since you're not really going to be using this a whole lot in CyberQuest, but it is good to know. So if you did ps aux, that's going to list all of the processes and what users are using those processes. So you can see a lot of me, the CLI user is using Pipewire, WirePlumber, Genome, all of that, but you can also see that the root user is obviously running all the background tasks and synchronization. This is good to see if you are running into some issues during a CTF or CyberQuest, if there's any hidden processes that are being ran to possibly impede, which I haven't seen for CyberQuest before, but you will find in other CTF tournaments. So I can grep things, which grep is to search. So if I wanted to search for notes, I can grep for notes. This might take it a minute. Or not. I might have done that wrong. Or I do not have enough system memory for that. Okay. So grep is to search things, so you can add grep. I'm sorry, I got that mixed up with a different command. So if we did that ps aux again, and we can add a pipe, which is it's next to your backslash. It's the same key as your backslash if you pressed shift, so that we call that a pipe. And then we can search for services using SSH. And now you can see here that out of all of that before that we saw with ps aux, it is now only searching for services using SSH, and it will show us where those services are, the PIDs of the services, and who's running those. So that's how you use grep. Sorry for the confusion. Another good command for some, fixing issues in Linux or seeing what is running is the top command. Top is going to give you the pretty much the same thing as PSAUX, but it's going to give you live updated versions, what's running, who's running it, memory that's available, memory swap speeds, and all of that. So this is good to know if you need to quickly search for something that might be giving you a headache, like NESSH or any of those services. So I'm not gonna keep you on processes and system information just because it's a lot. But going into some more important stuff like networking, you will use for the CyberQuest competition. You can do IPA, which is going to list out the IPs and the interfaces that they're running on. So here you go. Here's my IP, my home address, right there. So listing with IPA is going to list obviously where things are, so the local link and my Ethernet link for number 1 and number 2. And this is going to show you where your IP interfaces are located, which can be helpful for different commands and wireless attacks and stuff like that. You can also do IPR for the routes that those IP addresses are taking. So by default is via this IP address on interface Ethernet 0 using DHCP, and it's coming from this IP address. Same thing down here, and it's using kernel scope link from this IP address. So that's how you can kind of see where your IPs are going and all that kind of stuff. We will go over more networking commands later, different video to show you how to start getting into network attacks, but we can use the ping command, tag C3, and we're going to do that against google.com. So this is going to only ping Google 3 times, but during that you can see 64 bytes of information were received. This is how long it took, 12 milliseconds. This is the ICMP sequence. And, if we were to open up Wireshark, you would actually be able to see that happening live. But that's also a different video, is packet sniffing and packet manipulation. But that's how you ping some stuff. Trace path. Sure, I guess I will install trace path. Or not, because apparently they got rid of it. But we can, a lot of these problems that you're going to be solving during CyberQuest, some of them will have websites for them. In a good way, you can get information from a website is using the curl command. So we're going to curl tac I, and I will curl my own website. So if I curl that, you will see that it will show me what platform I'm running, the location that it's on, what server it's running on, the date and time, and all that kind of stuff. So so my CSP content security policy rejected the request, which is kind of good for me, but So that's how you do some basic networking stuff. Like I said, we're going to go back into that in a later video and dive into that a little bit more. Package management and help is really good in the command line interface. They make stuff pretty easy. We'll quickly just go over. If you're going to install anything new for your command line interface, you're going to need to update your system, which is sudo apt update. So this is going to use the super user do. It is going to grab the package apt and it's going to force an update command, and you can see this running through. Mine should be pretty much fully updated already. And so it fetched 74 megabytes of updates in 7 seconds, and 645 packages can be upgraded, but I'm not going to make you sit through and watch all that because it is going to be pain. But let's say you did want to install something new, if it wasn't already pre-installed on Kali or whatever version of Linux you're using, you can do sudo apt install tac y, and we'll do nmap. So nmap is already installed on here, but you can see if we use which nmap, it will show me where nmap is actually located in my system, and using that I can actually change my directory again to nmap if I needed to figure out some version files or pull log files. Apparently that's not it. Oh yeah. Now if I list it in here, now moving to that directory, if we went over to N, this might take a minute. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. We're not going to do that. But again, I can go back to my home directory that I want to go to. So, well, like I said, the command line interface makes it pretty easy to figure out stuff. If if I was to run nmap and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, so if I just typed nmap, you'll see starting nmap, no targets are specified, it's done. And I'm like, well, I want to know how I want to specify some targets. I want to know how I get that information. I can do nmap to tax and the help command. This will pretty much work for every single command line interface function or command or software that you will be using. Is tac help or just one tac help. Will show you pretty much everything that's in here. So it's going to say, oh, to use this, I need to do nmap, what type of scan I want to do, the options, and then a target. So going through here, I can be like, oh, okay, yeah, so SL is a list scan, it's going to list targets. Or I can do a ping scan, it's going to disable port scanning. Or, scan techniques, TCP connect scans. We'll go over this a lot more in depth later in a different video, but I can be like, oh, cool, now I know that I can do nmap. I'm going to use some of those commands that I saw in the help, and I'm going to scan my my host. And you can see that, hey, look at that. It actually ran through. It was scanning things. I'm scanning the host, so it won't actually accept that. If we scan google.com. So you'll see, now that it's actually running, it's scanning, it discovered open ports, and it's scanning services, and we'll stop that before we get banned from Google. That's how you can figure out what you need to do for, different softwares or tools and stuff like that. And Kali Linux and specifically some Parrot OS will normally definitely have their GUI interface, and you can see, reconnaissance, nmaps in here. Zenmap is the GUI version of nmap, or Dirbuster. If I didn't, I wanted to do web scanning. Oh, I don't know how to use Dirb. I can do that again. Dirb tac help. Or let's try one. I guess they expect you to be smarter than that, so that's not really a good, not a good example. So these commands that I've been showing you, and there's more commands. There's a lot of commands in Linux, but these are your bread and butter: navigation, files, permissions, processes, networking, and packages. If you get pretty good at this, and you can navigate this command line interface and navigate your entire Linux system and know where you need to go and what commands you need to run and the add-ons or tasks that you need to do, you will move through the CyberQuest challenges very easily and very smoothly. You're not spending a lot of time just sitting there trying to figure out what command to run, trying to remember what it is. There are practice sessions and websites that I would like to see you guys do. One of those being my favorite, which is going to be Over the Wire. It's called Bandit Over the Wire, which you can see here. So if I did Bandit Over the Wire, see here, it's going to start you at level 0. It will show you how to get in. So the goal of this level is for you to log in using SSH. It's going to give you the host to connect to and what port you need to connect to it, the username, and the password for level 0. Go to level 1 once you log in and find out how to beat level 1. And you can keep going. And it will give you commands that you may need to solve this level. And you can see some of these commands that I just went over with you, like ls and cd and cat and file, find. If you didn't know what this was, you can press on these and it will say cat Prints, standard output, options, files. It will show you how to do everything here. This is a very good way of learning how to do it, and as you go further on, it's going to get very difficult. You know, how the internet works. It's going to go SSL, Telnet, OpenSSL, SClient, and Nmap. I would recommend going through as many of these as you can. They are very good. And so doing that when you come back to the next lesson, or if I'm in there in person, it will help you out a lot, and not having to Google how to do something. But that's pretty much going to be it for this one. Just giving you a little bit of a go around on Linux command line. I highly recommend you practice it and get better at the command line interface, and make sure, I think Noah gave you some live boot USBs. If you want to do a VM, you can do a VM. It makes VPNing a little bit harder, or do a dual boot. If you don't know how to do a dual boot, don't try and set it up yourself. It can mess up your main operating system. But that should be about it for today. If you need any help, reach out to me on Discord. I'm always available. I'll take your call or take your message. Just shoot me a message and I'll help you out. And I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your week.